It's already noon, dear. Oh, oops. I looked outside. No wonder the sun was so bright and so high in the sky. Oops. Then why didn't you wake me up? I asked sleepily. Ha, she replied. It didn't feel right, that's all. I didn't feel right either. There was this sadness in her voice, but it went away as quickly as it came. The smile was back on her face in seconds. I'm just surprised, see, Mom continued, that you didn't even pay your respects to Father before you went to sleep last night. And you didn't even tell me you were coming in the first place. What's going on here? Her face wrinkled over, this time with concern. I stayed quiet for a while. It seemed like forever. I could feel the sun beating down on me. Oh, right, I said with a smile. Might as well go say hi. And I walked past Mom. I could hear her murmuring about how hopeless I was behind my back. I ignored her. I walked through the corridor. The flooring creaked under my feet. The altar room wasn't far away. I stopped at the door. It's been years, hasn't it? I whispered. The door slid open smoothly and came to rest with a snap. The scent of burning incense wafted into my nostrils. I closed the door behind me. No matter how many times I did this, it sent chills down my spine. After all, what place did I have in a room whose master would never return? The entire room was still. I sat cross-legged before the altar. The atmosphere was indescribable, quiet and solemn. It twisted inside me like a knife, or perhaps it chose to. For my part, I chose to stare at the picture of the deceased, who chose to stare back at me with a smile and without blinking. I sat there in silence for a time. Good to see you, I finally managed. Mind if I stay a while? The stillness of the room was a bit much. It was heavy. It settled on the ground like a chunk of dead air. I could feel it pressing down on me. But I remained sitting. I wonder why. Maybe it was because something was making me. Or maybe because I wanted to. I'd never know. I did know this. I could not call this man dad or father. But I had no idea why, or since when. Sometimes it felt like it had been a long time. Other times it felt like just yesterday. Or maybe it was because I didn't come here often enough. It didn't matter what I called him anymore. He'd never answer me either way. We'd never get to talk ever again. So I lit an incense stick. I rang the bell. And I put my hands together. Empty motions and rituals, no emotions behind them. Lather, rinse, repeat, like some lovable automation. Right, this was all lovable, myself included. Not rebellious, not impudent, those would have been fine, just laughable and ridiculous. Suddenly, I did not feel like staying in this mausoleum any longer. I left soon thereafter. We had salmon for lunch that day, tamagoyaki, cucumbers, and sesame oil on the side. Simple food, simply made, tasty, nostalgic, just like when I was a kid. I mentioned this to Mom. She just laughed. I found myself back in the room I'd once called mine. So much smaller than I remembered. Darker. I could smell the sunlight splintering into dust on the shadows. Not a thing had changed in 19 years, at least where this room was concerned. And I liked it this way. The smell, the size, the darkness, everything. The only sanctuary of an only child. I could still remember the day I was told that this room was mine. I was so excited I couldn't go to sleep. My very own place. My very own space. My very own castle. My invincible fortress. Except for the times my mom came and made me clean my room. I hated it. I used to fight and argue. I was a spoiled brat back then. Were all the kids so much trouble when they were growing up? Or was it just me? My old desk was over in the corner. It was just as I'd left it, without a master to call its own. So I pulled out the chair, sat down. There, desk, your master is back. The wood creaked. Too late. I just remembered it. This chair was uncomfortable. And some things, like this, never change. Some time passed. I started wondering what was for dinner. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder and louder. My door slid open. I looked to see who it was. My mom looked back at me with a smile. She had the western sky at her back. The setting sun poured vague shadows all over her. Thin as a knife, quiet as a dagger, but always so soft. That was Mom for you. So, she said, I'm going off to visit Father's grave. Would you like to come? Sure, I'll go. I see. That's wonderful, she replied gently. The sun was low. Our shadows were long. Night's curtain spilled like a woman's hair over the lay of the land. Falling. Always falling. It would be dark soon. Mom walked with small steps, as she always had. Always? Really? When I was younger, one of her steps was 2 or 3 of mine. But now the situation was reversed. She asked me questions, all the same ones. How was Tokyo? How was I doing? Was I okay on money? Was work going okay? How about my studies? Was I feeding myself right? Same old, same old. But it wasn't. You couldn't call it that. How do you put it? Deep down inside it hurt. Because I'd never exchanged this many words in person with Mom before. We reached the grave. Mom burned some incense, set down a new bouquet of flowers. She washed down the gravestone. Her hands glided through the air with practiced grace, while mine just held her bags and supplies, without practice and without grace. How often did she come here? Everything she did looked choreographed, well performed. But this was no performance, I could tell. I saw more truth in the movements of her little fingers than in all the holy books of the world. I didn't quite know how to put it. It ate away at me. Mom was always so gentle. And I was not. How could it be? How could our attitudes towards the man be so different? But then, Mom stood bolt upright and did something remarkably ungraceful. Her face twisted in pain. As did I. I raced to where she stood and caught her in my arms before she fell. So she'd stubbed her toe or something on the gravestone. "Come on, Mom," I said. "Watch out for those things. Wait, you've twisted your ankle. Can you stand?" She replied. "Ow, ow, 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 ow." Obviously, she couldn't, so I made her sit. Mom," I said, shaking my head. "You sure you're okay? That was awfully clumsy of you." "Haha, sorry about that," she answered with an apologetic smile. So I muttered, "I guess I have no choice." I turned my back to her, squatted down, and motioned for her to get on. I could hear her say, "Oh, I'll be fine. Ow, ow, ow." I snorted. "Come on now, don't be stubborn. It'll be easier this way." She replied playfully. "I guess I'll just rely on your strong arms." She positioned herself on my back. I could feel her clutching my shoulders. She was hurting, obviously. "And up we go," I announced. Whoa! The moment I stood with her on my back, everything became clear. I could feel Mom whisper something to me, an apology, maybe, or an endearment. She sounded so far away. I felt like crying. How did it come to this? A wave of nausea almost overtook me. I choked it back down. This just wasn't right, man. What had I been doing all this time? What had made me so blind and deaf that I never stopped to notice this? "Mom, tell me, all your life, and mine, were you always this light and fragile?" I tried to say something. I failed. Mom asked me if something was the matter. There was such a warm concern in her voice. All I could manage was, "Oh, sorry. You okay with holding the bags?" Mom laughed at that, told me she could handle that much, and that she felt nice and safe. I could feel her smile against my back. So apparently I was the only one who was embarrassed about this situation. The sun was low, our shadows were long. What where there had once been two, now we were one. Our pace was slow. I didn't mind that. I wanted to do something, say something, apologize to the woman I was carrying on my back, who had carried me in her belly, who had grown me into adulthood, who had grown so light, so frail, so mortal. Now it was too late. So I stammered, "Sorry, I never did more for you. I haven't been a very good son." "Huh?" Mom replied. "What in the world are you talking about, Takahiro?" I kept my mouth shut. I felt, rather than heard, Mom sigh. We were silent for a long time. Then she sighed again and said, "For someone so smart, you're awfully dense." I could only manage a surprised, "Huh?" to that. I mean, what else could I have said? "You must be blind. Can't you see? You've done so much. The fact is, you're here. The fact is, you've come back to see me. The fact is, you're carrying me. The fact is, you're a wonderful son. No mom in the world could ask for more. Great. Now I wouldn't be able to say anything all night. I couldn't see Mom, of course. I was carrying her on my back, but I didn't have to. Because I knew. I could feel her smiling, smiling wide. Because she knew that she'd won. We were quiet now, peaceful, like the warmth in our hearts. The last sunlight of the day drizzled through the low-hanging clouds. Everything was awash, including us. I heard Mom whisper, "It's so beautiful." And I replied, "Yeah." Mother and son, reunited at last after so long, because no matter how little we talked to each other, we were family. No matter where we were connected. We were home in a few moments, the most precious moments in my life. The past was the past, something to cherish every day, but the present was the present, something to live for every day. Mom was sound asleep by the time we got back home, so I put her to bed as gently as I could. She didn't wake up. I smiled wearily. I knew that this meant, after all, no dinner for me tonight. I hung around my room for a bit, but it was still too early to sleep. I walked out into the dark. No idea where I was going, but that was okay. My feet knew where to take me. "Right," I muttered. "How about the shrine?" The one and only playground in the entire village was located there. Lots of good memories. So, why not? Everything was as I remembered. The sun had vanished. The moon was high up in the sky. Its cold light splintered across the land. Not a single cloud in sight. Here and there, the stars punched holes of light in the veil of darkness overhead. There was rain. It just never stopped around here, did it? I looked up. I could see the droplets whispering through the misty air. The red arches of the shrine came into view, and then the long stairway. I remembered those steps very well. I used to trip and fall on them all the time when I was a kid. Talk about dangerous. Children bounce, after all. But if I took a spill like that now, bones would break. The thought made me smile. Now, how many steps were there? 68, if I remembered correctly. Well, time to see. Why not keep a running tally? Might be fun. And so I started climbing the steps, humming as I went. I stopped about halfway, because I'd started to regret this adventure. It was pouring now, couldn't even see ahead of me that well. The stairs were getting slickier by the second, and the dirt trail I'd navigated to get here was turning into a muddy mire. Now what? I sighed and started up the next step, but suddenly there was only air to meet me. I screamed. I remembered that. There were lots of loud noises, lots of bumps, pain, and a terrible crash. I couldn't see anything anymore. The rain was drumming down on me. and there was something heavier, run off, pouring down the stairs and onto me. All sorts of thoughts shot through my head. Was this the end? Was I going to die here? Help!